Hello and welcome to the Sleepy Gamer, where we wander through some of the most iconic worlds in gaming. Today, we begin our journey through Hyrule as it was during the Ocarina of Time. We'll begin our story in the Kokiri Forest. If you'd like, share your favorite memory from this place in Hyrule in the comments. I'd love to hear how others experience the locations we explore. Deep in the corner of the kingdom, where few ever tread, there lies a forest untouched by time. Trees rise tall and gentle, their canopies woven into a sheltering ceiling of green. Sunlight filters through the leaves in shifting patterns, dappling the mossy earth with quiet light. Here in this secluded glade lives a people known as the Kokiri, eternal children of the woods. These forest dwellers do not grow old. With eyes full of wonder and hearts unburdened by time, the Kokiri live simple, joyful lives beneath the Great Deku Tree's protection. Each child is granted a companion, a fairy, luminous and ever hovering, their presence as constant as the rustling of leaves in the forest. Together, child and sprite are bound inseparable as root and soil. At the center of the forest stands the Great Deku Tree, towering far above even the oldest trees. His bark is thick with age, creased with the stories of countless years. His roots stretch deep into the land, and his branches cradle the sky. He is no ordinary tree. He is an ancient guardian, a spirit of immense wisdom and power, and to the Kokiri, both protector and parent. It is said he has watched over the forest since the earliest days, when Hyrule was still young and the realms of forest, fire, and water had only just begun to take shape. The Kokiri live in houses grown from trunks, hollowed but living still. Ropes and bridges connect their homes, swaying gently in the breeze. The air is thick with birdsong, and the hum of insects is a lullaby unto itself. At the forest's edge, great walls of wood and vine enclose their world, not built by hand, but formed by nature itself. A boundary not just of space, but of fate. Few Kokiri ever question the borders. The outside world is a mystery, distant and unreal, like something glimpsed in a half-remembered dream. And yet, not every child in the forest fits the mold. There is only one, a boy without a fairy. He sleeps in a simple treehouse, tucked among the roots and boughs, the same as any other, but no glow follows in his footsteps. No sprite flutters at his side. The others notice, of course. They whisper when they think he isn't listening. A Kokiri without a fairy is like a shadow when there is no sun. He is quiet, often found standing alone at the forest edge, watching the light shift beyond the trees. The others play, build, chase butterflies through the underbrush. He watches, listens, waits. And though none can say why, there is something different about him. Something ancient, something waiting. The Great Deku Tree has watched him too. Through the years, he has felt the shape of destiny winding toward this quiet child. Not a Kokiri in truth, though none yet know it. Not bound to this forest, though his heart is rooted deep within it. He is something else, a seed carried in from another land, sprouting in foreign soil. Still, the forest has been his only home, and on this day, like all others, the trees sway gently in the wind. Somewhere in the distance, a woodpecker taps its rhythm into bark. A soft breeze carries the smell of damp earth and blooming clover. Leaves fall in slow spirals from the canopy above, spinning like lazy thoughts in the warm air. The forest does not rush. Time here moves like water in a deep pool, circling, quiet, endless. Even in the stillness, something begins to shift. The air seems heavier. The birds pause. The Great Deku Tree, who has remained still for so long, stirs within his roots. Change is coming, and with it, a call. One morning, the forest stirred before the sun. Where once the air had been warm and dreamlike, it now carried the faintest tension, like the hush before a storm or a story holding its breath. Somewhere above the canopy, a single fairy darted between branches, wings glinting faintly with morning light. Unlike the others, she had no partner among the Kokiri. She flew with purpose, summoned not by routine, but by fate. Her name was Navi. She skimmed the treetops, through glimmering dust motes and drifting pollen, until she came to a quiet treehouse nestled at the edge of the woods. There, the boy who had long slept alone now stirred. This time, he would not wake to another ordinary day. The silence had passed. The waiting was over. For the Great Deku Tree had called for him. Deep within the heart of the forest, the guardian spirit stood solemn beneath his leaves. His ancient bark creaked as his vast consciousness turned inward. Time itself seemed to ripple at his base, as if the forest's very roots were holding their breath. He had felt it, a darkness beyond the trees, a stirring from the east, where a desert wind whispered secrets not meant for the ears of children. Something had shifted in the fabric of Hyrule, and the great tree, though mighty, could no longer hold it back alone. The balance was faltering. And so he summoned the boy, not by blood of the forest, but by some deeper thread of destiny. Link made his way through the village paths, the soft crunch of grass under his boots. Word of the tree's summons had already spread, carried by fairies in half-whispered glances. When he reached the path that led to the Guardian's clearing, he found Mido standing in his way. Mido was Kokiri too, but older, louder, and certain of his place within the forest. He had always carried himself like the leader of the others, even if the Great Deku Tree had never declared it so. And now, seeing Link approach alone, something in Mido's eyes narrowed. He crossed his arms, his fairy flitting just above his shoulder, glowing a dull yellow. Mido must have put the scene together. The fairyless boy, now with a companion in tow, heading to visit the Great Deku Tree. It could only mean one thing. He was summoned. But Mido did not move. He blocked the path like a gate carved from pride and suspicion. He would not allow Link to pass, no. Instead, he would make up a reason for him to not go forward. A new rule, yes. To venture on to the forest's father's meadow, he must first acquire a sword as well as a shield. Perhaps he thought the challenge would be enough to send the boy home. Perhaps he simply wanted to delay what he could not control. Link said nothing. He only turned and walked away, not in defeat, but in thought. Shields were rare in the forest, weapons rarer still. The Kokiri lived in peace. They did not prepare for battle, and they did not expect to leave. But there were always odd things in the corners of the woods, rumors, games, tools passed down not out of need, but tradition. Link made his way to the village's small shop, a hollowed-out stump lined with shelves and sunlight. There, resting neatly on the counter, was a wooden shield, rounded and bound with bark, painted with a simple red emblem. The price? 40 rupees. A modest amount perhaps to some, but to a child of the woods who had never left, never traded, never counted money with anything more than curiosity, it was everything. Link emptied the pouch he carried, spilling every green and blue rupee he had gathered across seasons, found forgotten in patches of tall grass, won in games, reclaimed from dusty corners of tree houses, all now laid out in payment. The shopkeeper smiled, accepted his payment, and in return, handed him the item he desired with an approving nod. He slung the shield over his back. Its wooden composition would work well to deflect and block attacks. The wood was dense and solid, likely to hold up in most situations, though best kept away from fire. Still, it was only part of the gear he would need. Mito had mentioned a sword, too. And here, Link paused. He couldn't recall when he'd first heard the advice. Perhaps from a rumor, or perhaps from a dream. Maybe even it was something he had known from a past life. But it came back to him now like a whisper riding on the wind. It's dangerous to go alone. If you ever find yourself in need of a trusty companion, seek what lies behind the maze, where light does not reach. He knew a place like this, nestled within dense greenery behind his home. Link followed his intuition to a path overgrown with ivy and stillness. The trees grew denser here, their branches weaving together to scatter the sunlight into shifting patterns on the ground. The trail curved inward like a slow spiral, guiding him through a maze of tangled brush and knotted roots. He moved slowly, steadily. At its center, hidden behind a curtain of vines, sat a chest, old wood, green iron, waiting. Inside was a blade, the Kokiri sword. It was small, more a dagger than a sword, with a short handle and a leaf-like curve to its edge. But it fit well in his hand. It was balanced, and with it, he was ready. He strapped it to his side. He had not grown taller, not stronger, but now he had what he needed. And the Great Deku Tree was waiting. When he returned, Mito was stunned that he was able to find such equipment so quickly. He let him pass without further issue. The path beyond was quiet. Not far from the village's edge, the woods thickened. Vines draped from high branches. The roots of the trees curled across the trail like sleeping limbs, and among the ferns and brambles, strange plants stirred. Their stalks were thick and greenish-black, rising from the ground with slow, twitching motions. Their heads resembled closed blossoms until they opened. Rows of wooden teeth lined their gaping maws, clamping shut again and again, as though testing the air for something to bite. These were Deku Babas, forest guardians of a sort. Some, it said, could lunge at anyone foolish enough to stray too close. But these ones were rooted in place, docile in their hunger, snapping only when approached. Link circled one cautiously, shield raised. When it swung toward him, he ducked low and struck once with his sword. The head fell to the ground with a soft crack, the stalk folding in on itself like a flower at dusk. From its remains, he collected a few things he thought might serve him later. A long wooden stick and a peculiar nut. The Kokiri children often used these dried husks for pranks. Thrown hard against the ground, they burst with a bright flash and a sharp crack, harmless in play, but in the right moment, they could startle or even briefly stun an enemy. He pressed on, felling one creature after another. Each left behind something worth taking, and Link gathered the spoils with care, tucking them into his belt. They weren't blades, but they could burn, and in the shadows ahead, that might prove useful. The forest watched in silence as he passed. He did not look back. The Great Deku Tree was just ahead. When Link arrived beneath his great boughs, the Deku Tree stood motionless. His vast form loomed like a monument of bark and silence, but his presence was alive, old as the land, thoughtful as the stars. His voice, though unheard by ears, settled into the hearts of those who listened. And now he gave his first task. A curse had taken root within the tree's own body, a corruption unlike anything the forest had ever known. Strange creatures skittered in the shadows of his hollow, their limbs sharp with malice. No Kokiri dared approach, for the air inside had grown cold, the light dimmed. But the boy was different. The boy would enter. He stood before the mouth of the Deku Tree, now open like a cavern of old wood and ancient breath. Inside, the air was cool and damp, tinged with the scent of moss and old dust. It was not a place of comfort. It was a place of trial. The roots formed twisting staircases and narrow wooden bridges, some suspended above shadowed drops. Vines coiled around beams like watchful serpents. Ancient platforms of woven bark rose and fell, responding not to machines, but to nature's design. Water dripped slowly from the ceiling above, creating soft echoes in the stillness. Somewhere deeper, the faint scrape of chitin on wood suggested something waking. He was not a warrior, not yet, but he stepped forward. Each level of the tree rose like a lesson. Strange, pulsing creatures clung to the walls, and Deku Scrub spat seeds from the shadows. Regardless, he pressed on. With each step, he learned, not just to fight, but to move with intent, to see the pattern, to trust his steps in places where the ground did not welcome them. At the deepest root, the corruption took form, not just a presence, but a creature, a twisted thing born of shadow and spite. There, beneath the sacred bark of the guardian tree, Link's courage was tested, and when the silence returned, it was not empty, it was earned. And so, this chapter of our journey comes to a close. If you've enjoyed wandering through Hyrule with me, consider leaving a like and subscribing so you won't miss the next part of the story. It's one small way to help keep these adventures going. Until we meet again.